For the YouTube employee that's reviewing this video, all I'm going over today is routine and deep cleaning and maintenance of this firearm. I am not unsafely altering or otherwise constructing, deconstructing, or altering the rifle other than what is intended to be cleaned and performed at a user level from the factory. What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Idaho Rifleman. Today we're going to go over the routine cleaning and maintenance and a deep cleaning on the Stevens 334 bolt action Turkish import rifle. This rifle, for those who haven't seen, is chambered in 308. So we're also going to talk about the factory setting for the trigger pull. I've got a Wheeler trigger pull scale with the sliding indicator on it. So we'll talk about that and the factory settings for user adjustment on the trigger. With that, let's go ahead and get started. So a few of you have asked me about the bipod on this. It is an aftermarket bipod. It's a Champion bipod. It is adjustable. You just pull and click to set the feet. And then there are detent releases on the front. Make sure your fingers are out of the way because they are spring loaded. If you have an in-between adjustment, you can also turn the knob on the front to lock the bipod in place. It just attaches to the sling stud on the front. It's a very, very easy adjustment. You have a rotating dial right here. And then where the sling actually attaches to on the front. If I can get this to catch on thread here. Here we go. You have to have it fairly loose. And it just comes free. Again, two little detents go right into the sling stud, and that's how you attach the bipod. We'll go ahead and leave it off for the rest of the video. And this sling that I have, I don't remember what brand it is. It's just a well-cushioned leather sling. Sometimes getting these studs to catch and thread, there it goes. Can be a little tricky, but it's just quick attach, quick release. This one was a little tight to get it on as well, so get it off is kind of a pain. There. Just quick release studs, push them, and rotated it back into place to lock it. We'll get that out of the way. So to check the trigger pull on this, we're going to go ahead and cock it, and then we'll use the trigger scale to show what the factory setting for poundage is. Make sure this is set to 0. I'm going to rotate this so you guys can actually see. Set that on the trigger, and then this yellow indicator, make sure it's set to 0. The sliding indicator will stay where the poundage is at. Gotcha. We're sitting just over 6.5 pounds. We'll go a couple of times on this. I checked and cleared the rifle beforehand, but again, it's always very important to make sure that you drop the magazine and make sure your rifle is clear and safe. Go ahead and check this again. They say to do this 3 to 5 times to get an accurate average. 6.5 pounds. And 7 pounds. So again, we're still right in that 6.5 to 7 pounds from the factory. We'll talk about the factory settings here in a minute, but while the rifle's still together, I wanted to get that part out of the way. While I'm sitting here, like I said, this is going to be a more deep cleaning, but still routine. I've got Hops 9 gun oil. I've got a Hops 9 solvent. I just picked that up. This we ran out in the last video. some basic cleaning patches. I have a short brush. This is more for a pistol, but I do like it for kind of getting into the smaller grooves and stuff on the rifle. I keep a pair of needle nose pliers handy. That way if I need to reach something that drops down in somewhere where my hands can't reach. For the trigger adjustment, this is an SL6 standard flat blade screwdriver. And I keep a magnet handy too, just so that I can find any small pieces that get away from me. These are going to be controversial. These are just electrician's test probes, but I keep these for anything that you can do a gentle cleaning to get carbon off of anywhere that's deep down seated in the rifle somewhere. If you are leaving a scratch that you can see, you're using them too hard, just be very, very careful with them. To take the rifle down, this is a number 5 metric Allen key. There are 2 screws, one here and one just ahead of the trigger guard. I can't show taking this down on YouTube, but maybe I can. I don't know. The rules are fuzzy, so we're just going to err on the side of caution. There are 2 spacers in these. I'll show you once I get the screws out. Do not lose those spacers, because that's what keeps the bolt at the proper depth to keep it from riding into the barrel and into the actual action and bolt of the rifle. Just those 2 screws, and the assembly lifts free and separates the stock from the receiver and barrel of the rifle. This one has the spacer. It's flattened and cut on one side. That is the one for the trigger guard. This magnet's also handy as you're working on stuff. You can just set them right there. This spacer is shorter and round. That's the one for ahead of the mag well here. So now your stock's apart. Again, this rifle has not had a whole lot of rounds through it, so the cleaning on this one isn't going to need to be as thorough as if I've put hundreds and hundreds of rounds through it. I haven't done that yet. But just inspect everything. Make sure that you don't see any cracks in the wood or any chips or anything that could compromise the integrity of your firearm. I hope this camera autofocuses for you guys. You can see the inside is all polymer inside the wood. And I don't see a lot of carbon buildup in here yet. So that's a positive, but we'll just go ahead and run a patch over it just to make sure. Yeah, clean as a whistle. So we're going to set the stock aside and we'll talk about the cleaning on the barrel, receiver, and the trigger assembly. This is going to be very hard to see and I can't get close enough to the camera to show you, but there is a set screw right here ahead of the trigger. There is some discussion as to whether the Turkish rifles are easier to adjust than the Savage, or excuse me, the Stevens rifles, but it is adjustable. In is what lessens your trigger pull, out makes it heavier. So we were sitting between 6.5 and 7. Personally, I like about a 5 pound, 5 to 4. So we'll see what we can do. Again, I can't show this by YouTube. It's very fuzzy. I'm going to err on the side of caution because I don't want to lose this channel or the ability to share information with you guys. So if I were to show you how to do this, you would use this SL6 flathead and or standard screwdriver if you'd rather, and adjust the trigger tension. So we're going to go ahead and do that now. Well, good news and bad news. The good news is the trigger is adjustable. It takes a lot to do it. There is some sort of compound or something on that screw. It's very, very stiff. I had to use a soldering iron to heat it up. Unfortunately, it also broke the screw. So I got a little bit of an adjustment on it. We're going to test and see where it's at. I'll show you guys that. And, but we're not adjusting it anymore. Thankfully, this is my rifle, so I don't have to explain that to anybody. Okay, 5.5. So we got some adjustment out of it. There. 5.5. Five and a half all 3 times. So there it is. 5.5. It's a little bit better than it was. It's again, this 2-stage trigger, I call it take up. Some of you guys have pointed out that is the nature of the 2-stage trigger, which it is. There's play at the beginning of it. There's a good bit of movement in there, and that's just that initial stage. And it's still a very clean trigger. So let's get into a little bit more of the deeper cleaning in this. Again, this rifle's not going to be as dirty because it hasn't had that many rounds through it. I haven't put hundreds and hundreds of rounds. So you're going to want to just get your solvent and a patch. And lightly clean these areas. And again, it's very important when you're doing this. Remember, this is something for newer shooters and people that are newer to cleaning guns. You guys that have done this before know this, but this solvent is stripping oil and lubrication away from the parts, but it's also cutting that carbon really well. So that's why it's important to run a solvent over, but it's also very important to make sure that you grease the parts again. Last video I showed you how to clean the bolt and disassemble that for routine maintenance and cleaning. Now I'm just showing you these kind of inner workings of the rifle and around the trigger that you can't get to unless you actually take the rifle down. But very simple to do with those 2 bolts. One bolt is significantly longer and the spacer's longer and it's cut. That's for the trigger guard, and that sits right up against this assembly right here. The other bolt goes in right here. It's got a block, but both of these, if you don't maintain that spacer and keep it with the bolts, if you lose that spacer, then you can set that bolt, this bolt, into the bolt of the rifle, the bolt assembly, and the other one will actually has the potential to seat into the chamber. So just be very cautious of those. Make sure not to lose them. With oil, just add oil into your trigger assembly. Anywhere that can move or has moving parts, then make sure to add oil back after stripping it away. There's an exposed spring on the front here. So, and again, I personally over oil more than some people would prefer, but it's just going to settle in there and keep your gun lubricated. You don't want it pouring out, because when you set the rifle on the bedspread and it leaves a puddle, it tends to upset your wife. Don't ask me how I know. So. You want your rifle to operate smoothly and efficiently when you need it to. So I think that it's always better to over oil just a little bit. So now, just like the last video, you want to get it inside these moving parts, and you can just wipe away any excess on the exterior, and it's just going to help give an extra coating on those parts as well. And actuate your safety. Move it back and forth to get that oil into that action very, very well. I'm going to do a drop of oil inside where the bolts set, just to keep the threads intact and working properly. And then I'll take my brush and just do a gentle cleaning on this underside here where I couldn't get to with the rifle put together. Once these rifles really get kind of carbon built, then you can see the areas that you need to clean a little bit better. But we're just going to do a gentle brushing on this in these areas just to make sure that it's good to go. Okay, set the barrel assembly down. I'm going to just take a brush in here. And I'm not putting a lot of pressure on this. I didn't need to use my picks and probes on this rifle. I've used it on others lots of times. And like I said, just don't put so much pressure on that you're scratching and marring your finish and your parts. It's just to get those really deep, narrow pits and crevices in your gun that can get built up with carbon. And just like that, that's the takedown and the trigger maintenance on this rifle. I'm going to go ahead and put it back together here real quick, and like magic, be sure not to over tighten your bolts, guys. For one, they don't need to be reefed. I snug them up with the Allen key extended, and then I just give them a snug until they stop sideways, just for that extra torque, but they don't need to be reefed in and cranked down. That's pretty much the long and the short of it, guys. Again, this bipod is just very, very easy to install. And there it is, just snug it up. These just fold up or fold out. There's no detent or catch, it's just spring loaded. And then you can reattach your sling right here. I did notice with one of my other slings that as I was carrying it in here, it actually worked to the pin out and the sling failed. So something to watch and be cognizant of, but it seems to be a one-off because my other slings have been just fine with it. So thanks for watching. Thanks for tuning in. Hopefully you guys found it interesting and informative. Hopefully it answered some of your questions. Again, with the trigger, I've read that the Turkish Turquoise models of this that were released, it's very easy to adjust the trigger pull. It seems like Stevens put some kind of a compound in there to make it harder to adjust, but we were able to get a pound out of it before the screw broke. So keep that in mind. That may be something that you run into if you do try to adjust the trigger tension on this. But other than that, still been very happy with this rifle, and I'm glad we were able to make this video today and show you part 2 of the takedown and maintenance of this rifle. Be sure to check out Idaho Rifleman on Facebook and Instagram. Like, comment, make sure you're following the channel here. And as always, I hope you guys have a fantastic week. Take care, stay safe, and God bless. We'll see you next time here on Idaho Rifleman.